On this episode of ReActivated, we get real about complicated grief, parenthood, survival, and what it means to try to keep living after life changes everything. There are some conversations that matter because of the subject, and then there are some that matter because of the person. This is both. I want to be careful with this one because this isn't an episode built around a headline. It isn't built around a dramatic premise, and it isn't built around the kind of story people sometimes think they understand the moment they hear just a few details of it. It's built around a person, someone I met in an unexpected point in both of our lives. I met Jewel through a dating app. More specifically, Stir. If you haven't heard of Stir, it's basically Match, but for single parents. I know on the surface, that can make it sound like this conversation starts in only one place. But really, it starts somewhere much deeper than that. Because what stayed with me was never the dating app. It was never the novelty of how two people cross paths. It was the weight she was carrying. It was the honesty in our conversations. It was the reality of what it means to keep moving through life when life has already broken something in you. You see, Jewel, she had lost her husband to Bouchette's. She was also raising a young daughter. And just saying that out loud should be enough to make most of us slow down. Because too often when people hear a story like that, they rush to interpret before they even taken the time to understand it. They start measuring timelines, assigning meaning. They start deciding what grief is supposed to look like and what strength is supposed to look like, what moving forward is supposed to look like. But life doesn't ask for our opinions before it changes everything. Grief does not unfold according to what feels comfortable to the people watching from the outside. Now, that's something I've come to believe more and more deeply as I have gotten older. A lot of people have ideas about pain when it's happening to somebody else. From a safe distance, everybody sounds wise. Everybody has standards. Everybody has a timeline. Everybody knows what healing should be. But up close, it's different. Up close, healing is not neat. It's not linear. It's not polished, and it's almost never easy to explain. Up close, people are just trying to survive what they never asked for. They're trying to make it through the day. And they're trying to hold themselves together. They're trying to figure out how to be present for the people who still need them, even while carrying something heavy enough to alter their whole sense of who they are. And when a child is involved, that weight changes shape even more, because grief is one thing, but grief, while still needing the parent, is something else entirely. The world does not stop because your heart did for a while. There's still routines, still meals, still bedtime, still questions from a little person trying to understand why life feels different. And still moments where you have to show love and patience and steadiness and safety while carrying pain that doesn't simply disappear because the day demands that you function. That kind of reality deserves more than cliche. It deserves more than those polished phrases people reach for when they want pain to sound meaningful from a distance. It deserves honesty. And that's really what I hope this episode is. Not a performance, not a spectacle, not a conversation built around somebody else's hardship just because hardship makes people lean in. I wanted this to be a real conversation, a human one. A conversation about loss, yes, but also about survival, about motherhood, about loneliness, about identity and guilt, about the strange and sometimes uncomfortable truth that life can keep asking things of you, even after it has taken something from you that can never be replaced. I also think this conversation fits the deeper question at the center of this show. Who do we become after life does not go the way we thought it would? Not just politically, not just publicly, personally. Who do we become when the script is gone? When the plan fails? When the version of life we thought we were living is no longer available to us? Do we shut down? Do we numb out? Do we pretend we are fine? Do we let the pain define us completely? Or do we slowly and perfectly begin the work of building something honest of what remains? I don't ask that question because I have some polished answer. I ask it because I think most of us are living inside some version of it. Some of us through grief, some through divorce, some through disappointment, some through regret, some through loneliness, some through quiet realization that life has become something very different from what we once imagined. And yet somehow we still have to decide who we are going to be. And that's why I wanted to sit down with Jewel. Not because her story can be reduced to loss, and not because I think pain automatically makes someone a symbol, but because there's something real and worth listening to in the way a person keeps going, in the way they carry love and grief at the same time, in the way they keep showing up, in the way they try to make meaning without pretending everything's okay. So, this conversation is an invitation to slow down, listen more carefully, to set judgment aside, to let a human story be human, and to remember that sometimes strength does not look loud or dramatic. Sometimes it looks like surviving. Sometimes it looks like parenting through heartbreak. Sometimes it looks like being honest about what hurts. Sometimes it looks like giving yourself permission to keep living, even when part of you is still grieving what was lost. And this is my conversation with Jewel. Say thank you for being willing to do this. I know it's not a light conversation, and I know some of what we're going to talk about lives in a really complicated place. So before we get into any of this, I just want to say I appreciate your honesty and I appreciate your trust. Also, I want to make this clear for basically anyone out there listening that I didn't want this to be a conversation about reducing your life to like any one particular chapter or any particular loss or one label, because your story carries a kind of complexity that people don't always make room for. And I think that complexity matters. So maybe the best place that we can start would be with you, not like at the hardest part, not with the loss first, just you. So who were you before everything changed? What did it feel like back then? And what kind of woman, what kind of mother, what kind of family life were you really trying to build for yourself back in the day?
Before him, I was employed, I had my own business. I was involved with family, I was very involved with friendships, very social. Before the loss, I was not employed. I was technically a caregiver at home, a mother, isolated, and yeah, there was a piece of me sad.
I could only imagine. But, you know, when your husband, Anthony, who had Behcet's, and I think on a previous conversation we talked about that he had gotten it while he was, after he enlisted, was a side effect of some of the vaccines he had to take as part of, you know, the requirement for being enlisted. Afterward, when things started changing in like a real kind of way and everything was becoming like your reality, what did life start feeling like inside the home?
Well, from the get-go, everything was very different because he was terminal even before we started dating. So nothing about dating was remotely the same. Intimacy, even a kiss, being able to you have to schedule time and stuff like that, windows because of his energy. And then even as the relationship progressed, again, not the same when you live with somebody because now I have to worry about his immune system's compromised. So I have to limit where I'm going, I have to limit who I'm touching, I have to be aware of everything, I have to watch the house, showering as soon as you get home and, all of that. Then he was sterile that because of his medical conditions and because of his medications, there was no chance. Like it would be impossible for him to have kids. And then a month I thought things were I was pregnant. We had our miracle baby. We were pregnant and a month before like I'm thinking, okay, well things are starting to change, things are going positive. I'm going to start get like things are gonna start looking somewhat normal. And he had 2 heart attacks 10 days apart, a month before she was born. So, obviously, I saw that things weren't going to it was gonna be more on me. So, that was the big reality check to kinda see that, like, well, man, even once the baby got to be a year old, I told him, "Because of your health, I'm scared now, and God forbid anything happens." Our support system was here in Arizona, so I was like, "We have to go back." I'm saying I wanna go back because if something happens to you, I don't have the help out here.
It sounded like even before his death, you started planning on, making sure that things were secure for you, and that must be a hard thing to have to kind of consider while you're going through that. And I think that maybe a lot of people don't understand is the grief before loss. And so can you like tell us a little bit about maybe when you started realizing that you were grieving the end of that relationship even before your husband had passed on?
I think because it's a worry that's in the back of the mind, so you're constantly tense, you're constantly worried even just a trip to the grocery store. I was worried that I'd come back and he was dead. So, I mean, you can imagine the goodbyes just to go to the store and come back. So, it wasn't like an aha, it was always something in the back of the mind, and I don't think I realized, like, we really lived that way and really tried to say what we could. I mean, in good and bad ways, I can see the benefit and the downfall of that, but it wasn't until after he died that I realized I had grieved him so much because it wasn't like yes, when as soon as I walked into the hospital room and I saw that I had missed it and I was like 7 minutes late. Yeah, that sucked, but I honestly didn't have, like, another, like, big giant cry until, like, a month later. I obviously had cries, but nothing detrimental, not too many.
Which is, interesting. And I'm wondering how that coincides. Because I think, again, for the record, we met on Stir, which is a dating app for single parents. So, and I think we met, honestly, you probably know the timeline better than I do, but it was like 2, 3 months after he passed.
We started talking you were actually the first person I matched with. So that was like
That's
it's
that's
I
such
don't
a
want it to
sad
sound bad
introduction. Such a sad
that
introduction into into
it
into
was
online dating.
it was, no, you were very nice. It scared me actually because I wanted to go just kinda dip my toe in and like, okay, I'm gonna just kinda meet people, go out to dinner, kinda learn how to talk, and we actually do have a lot in common, which is why we've been able to maintain a friendship. I was just like, "Well, um, like, where can I find an excuse? Because 'Cause I'm obviously, like, scared, not ready for any of this, and realize I need to somehow backpedal. I'm learning at the same time, self-awareness is kicking in, and you can kinda summarize from an observant perspective.
Yeah, yeah. So I think what stood out to me, I mean, the first two things was you were the first girl I met online that was like a widow. I think the first woman I actually spoke to that was a widow. So that question to me caught me off guard of like, well, first thing is I'm a widow, and so like I'm like, okay, I don't what does that mean? I do I know what it means, obviously, but I was like, what? I think I said, okay, why do I care? But the second thing was what caught me off was we started after our initial conversation talking about like, does anything stick out as possible red flags? And the only thing, the only thing I said was like, hey, the only thing I'd be worried about is it's been kind of soon. And uh, I don't think you believed me at the time. And it's not, I don't think it's your fault on that particular thing because, and we've had conversations about this. What the quick grief does to us when you mix in anxiety is so, I don't know, it makes your normal thoughts cross yourself basically, right? And so there's a lot of things that go on in terms of when you're grieving the loss of a relationship. And I think one of the things that initially taught us was that I understood grief, and not in the same way that you did, because obviously grief is different, but I understood what loss could do to somebody. And you were mourning not just the loss of a person, but we did share in the loss of future. Like, we were grieving all those things that we thought we may have had, but we didn't.
Yeah.
And there's a constant reminder of it. And so that when you throw in kids into the mix, like I also understood the waves of grief of like you don't know when it's gonna come. It's just gonna smack you in the face, and then it's just gonna be there. So I think it was interesting. Can you tell us a little bit about how you think grief and like your mental state around the time of us meeting on Stir, you dipping your toe out there, what you think you were looking for, I mean, maybe lessons that you've learned, that type of stuff. I'll let you get out to that, but I will say, just real quick, because I have to say this. This is my opportunity. Not about you, but I mean you have told me stories too. And so the one thing I always say is like this is my PS to all men listening out there. And you know what? There's probably some creepy women too. So creepy women, listening ears on, please. The stories that I've heard of you all, what you do, you need to get help. Maybe I think maybe really think about some kind of therapy because or listen, why don't you just ask your mom if it's okay for what you're doing? Like if you're thinking about like, hey, should I create 100 different profiles and find this person over and over again so I can keep sending them messages, even though they keep blocking me for 2 days? Ask your mom if you think you should do that before you send a picture of your genitalia.
God.
Message your just quick text your mom. Hey mom, I'm thinking about sending my a picture of my dick to this girl I've never met. Should I do that? And I think even while writing it out to your mother, it will give you the opportunity to realize you're being a creep and you're making a lot of women's lives very difficult. And in turn, also making my life difficult. And I don't like my life being more difficult. So stop being creeps. Now, PSA over. We'll go back. Let's talk a little bit about your your mindset back then. And how do you think grief and like anxiety and everything kind of played into that?
Was excited to meet people, excited to be out of the bubble because I essentially lived COVID quarantine for 8 years. So I was excited to just experience and live and all of that. So that big motivation was there. I didn't want to jump right into a relationship. I think I mean I'm still even saying I want a best friend first. Like I always wanted that, but as far as anything else, I didn't know. I did continue going through dating, and unfortunately, the people that I gave well, the person that I gave a chance to, I will admit it was probably a trauma bond. He was widowed as well, um, also from a childhood love, so there's a lot of those symmetries and stuff like that there. He is an elected politician, so I thought that there was then that safety there that I wouldn't have to deal with certain things that I had to deal with in my past. Unfortunately, what I expected somebody else to kinda have at least grown since they were further along. I expected them to meet up to certain things, and I excused, I settled, and it started turning into self-abandonment, and when the fog and everything wore off, I started standing up, and I started speaking up for myself, and the avoidant behavior continued, and at this point, like, if we were and I even told him, I said, "If we had just stayed dating, then some of this stuff I would have had patience to still even attempt to work with you through. But having children involved, and I was at least in that mindset even before the fog, I'm like, I give myself credit because I knew kind of the steps to navigating a relationship. I just picked the wrong person. And it was even a long distance relationship. So it's not like I even picked somebody. I couldn't have like picked anybody more distant physically, mentally, emotionally,
Less
and
available.
less available. There was unfortunately womanizing behaviors as well, which sucked, and lack of boundaries, and I can't compromise on morals. So I did end it.
As a member of the Democratic Party, I'm not gonna call out the member of the Democratic Party that you're talking about. What I will say is that one of the ways you could tell that you didn't have a lot of experience with politicians is that you thought that dating a politician would be normal. Because I know more. I obviously know more than the viewers or listeners about that relationship because I ruthlessly made fun of you and told you everything you know now for months because I'm always right and I know everything.
And you were.
But you're very adamant about overlooking things. We'll say red flags. And acknowledging that you're settling. So, and I'm gonna hold your feet to the fire here. So it was kind of a both ways kind of thing, right? In terms of like he wasn't being completely honest with you about his availability,
Yeah.
and I don't think you were being completely honest with him with what you were looking for in life, and whether or not he could meet those standards. And that's just from an outsider looking in, but how do you think, like, your mental state at that time, your way you were trying to deal with things, I would say, is affected that type of decision? Like, looking back on it, we can all say, "Well, I wouldn't do that again," but, like, why do you think you did that?
I
And
know exactly.
how how do you think you would prevent doing that now?
The connection with being widowed, childhood love, and it being isolated, I needed a safe I my closest person at the time was Anthony's mom. I can't unload everything all the time that I'm feeling to her because she's going through it too. She needs a place to be able to kinda let everything out, and for the first 4 months, I was living with her. And then she's been my help and my other person with watching my daughter so that I can kinda have those breaks, I can have moments to grieve. So, now that I'm out of the fog, I have therapy, I have built up a community, I have a support system that gave me the I think that cleared it kind of for me, the fog for me, and I was able to then stand my ground and confidently let somebody go, even with future trips and stuff like that planned. And now I know exactly what I want. First off, they're deleted the apps, so we're not doing this app dating. I'm gonna do this the old-fashioned way, and I want emotional intelligence, I want emotional availability, and I need to make sure I keep that on myself. So I'm really more so just focusing on myself, my life, working on me, and then I'm just gonna kinda hope that it'll magically happen.
So it's been about 18 months now, right?
Yeah, 17 months
17 months. How
or no, 18 months is a year and a half, so 19.
we've talked before about the high level of communication that you 2 had and that, you and Anthony had known each other since childhood, and there was, like, not a lot of secrets between you 2, and that was a pretty good foundation for a relationship. As his health started deteriorating, like, how did that relationship hold up? Like, was there any struggles that you had to deal with that maybe you didn't have the tools to understand how to comprehend or deal with at the time, or things that you didn't really want to maybe even want to get help for because you didn't want to open the blinds to the windows inside, if that makes any sense.
A lot that goes on when it comes to patients is they're not always nice. They're scared, they're impatient, they're in pain, and especially, unfortunately, with somebody who has such a rare disease and at such a young age, there's a lot of people that just don't understand. And I mean, I can understand it because even I when it came to leaving emergency rooms and stuff like that, I learned how to be calm and stern and assertive and let them know, like, I mean business. I'm not happy with these, calling every 3 hours. So, I mean, I can understand the reasoning, so that's why I stayed, but it's hard. You have to sit, grin, and bear it, and they'll say things that they don't obviously mean, but it's stuff that's going on in their head, and it's hard for anybody to hear.
Yeah.
So, it's a lot
Well,
of
ultimately,
accountability.
that comes down to, their ultimately their own fear and anxiety and pain and having to deal with, you know, their health deteriorating and what's gonna happen next. And in your case, you have, Anthony's was he had you and your daughter, and so it makes it even more difficult to have to kind of come to terms with those over those things and not knowing when it's gonna, finally take you. And so I can definitely understand that having an impact, but also don't want to I don't want to I don't I don't want to invalidate any of the struggle that you went through, because ultimately, as hard as it was for him, it was difficult for you as also trying to deal with those same things and try to be his caregiver at the same time. And I think what is important about that is that he was getting treatment through the VA, and you had mentioned that one of the issues that you all had was the program that you were in, as his caregiver. When you had moved, you had to reapply, and you ended up being denied from getting into that program because he could, you said, walk up because he was able to walk to the bathroom himself. You were no longer eligible to be paid for being his caregiver, but you still had to be his caregiver. So in reality, you just lost the income from doing the thing that you had to do for your husband, who had been who had been gotten this disorder, this disease, because of his service.
Mhm.
And can you talk a little bit more about that? Because that pisses me off in terms of, because I didn't know that until recently, in terms of like we did. It's almost like our governor said, we did this,
Mhm.
but also we're not gonna really. You seem all. We know you're probably gonna die, but like you seem okay. Like, because you can get up and walk 15, you seem fine. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
So initially, when or before me, it was his mom as his caregiver. And to add me on there, it would have had to stop the caregiver check, reapply with me as the primary, and then put his mom as the secondary. And that could end up taking anywhere from 3 to 6 months for someone to get back on there. I had already come home to be his caregiver, and so we couldn't go without that, so instead, we put me as the secondary. We had already always planned, we wanted to be out of Arizona, kinda a healing, and that's a whole other story, but we communicated with caregiver, and caregiver evaluations came in every single 3 months. They're going through checking your entire house. They're going through you have to talk about everything you're doing all day for them, your reasoning, what is it that you go through mentally and physically? Is there anything that you need help with and stuff like that? And so we spoke up and we said, "We wanna move. Is that gonna mess anything up with one caregiver being with him and the other one being in the primary? Because I wasn't the primary." And it even in, like, the appointments, I kept having to try and explain to them and kinda take over the questioning because they're asking his mom who works, and yes, we communicated with her all the time. She was in the know of everything. She came over, quite often, but I didn't feel like I was as much recognized. I didn't get the same amount of benefits and the support that, like, the primary would. So then we moved to Minnesota and we check in with his, VSO, veteran service officer, and they inform us, "No, and you'll be responsible for any back pay, so you need to immediately stop and reapply." Well, we just moved to a new state. I think a week before, I had just found out I was pregnant, and so this means this is like a third of our income that's gonna be gone. I mean, thankfully, we made it work and we did what we had to do, but getting kicked off that program then meant, that ball drops, and when I go and call me as listed as the caregiver made it so much easier for me to just schedule appointments, take messages, do whatever it was because as soon as like his phone, we had systems for everything. We had codes for the way of driving. He didn't drive without GPS and me in the car to tell him exactly where to go left and right because his memory, he wouldn't even remember to look at the screen. Yeah, that was disappointing to see. I mean, I am grateful for what the VA has done since he passed and the recognition and stuff like that and the seriousness of all of it. But yeah, that sucked as far as the caregiver program. They did a whole reevaluation and when they came in and I'm not gonna go through what my needs were for him because that's private. I'm not gonna disrespect him in that way. They flat out said, "Because he can walk, I don't have to walk him to the bathroom." I'm like, "He has he had a cane. He had a cane and he even had like a little push scooter." So I'm like, "I don't he's not getting up and making him food. He's not getting up to go get himself a drink. He's not getting up to go get the baby." Like, that's the I'm not yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, that must have been rough.
still passionate about it.
So I just want to also make sure, I don't want these interviews, and you're my first guest, right? So thank you for being my first guest. And I don't want these to be one-sided. No, you and I obviously have we met on and so we have a history. We've known each other for 17 months now, something like that. So I just wanted to you've opened yourself up to questions from me, and I wanted to, open make a space for you to ask me anything that you wanted to ask because again, I want this to be kind of a conversation, and I'm sure yourself and the 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 handfuls of people out there that may watch this may want to hear me be called out or something. So
All right. So I mean, you've kind of divulged into it a little bit on your previous episodes, but where are you at mindset wise in dating and relationships?
that's been kind of a hard thing for me to kind of fully understand, and I think the what drives me nuts is I can't say what I want to say because it's like the cliche typical man thing, and which is I'm not ready for commitment. Like, and I'm not. It's just 100% I'm not. And I'm not saying that in terms of like I want to go and nail everything that I can. I don't. I don't want it's not commitment. I don't want connection right now because and I've talked about this before about w- um the end of my 2025 and what kind of went through my head. And the thing is when I say I gave up, uh, I lost my connection to the rest of the world, and I think part of this has been to try to give me an avenue to work through some of that stuff, but ultimately, what I know is that I have tried since my last relationship ended last year, I have tried to find that connection, and it probably is something I need to work on too, but I've always found my connection to society and the world as a whole through as my connection through my individual bubble group person I'm dating kind of thing, right? And so, like, back when I was involved in politics, it was like that little LD, that people that we would be hanging out together. The Mesa Rebel Alliance is what we called it at one point. And when I started dating my ex-wife, it then became about her and then my son. And I still have that connection to my son, but it's not the same. And so when started dating again and trying to get serious, that connection, it's not there, and I know I need to be able to fulfill that through something else because it's not fair for me to put that burden onto somebody else. And until I figure out my own crap, no relationship I'm going to be in is going to be successful.
So how do you explain that to somebody? You feel-
I don't typically have to.
So are you actively like what are you doing then as far as are you actively dating? Are you in what avenues? And how do
I'm
you
not,
how do you explain this to somebody as like you're meeting? How do you have that come across?
so I'm not actively trying to find anybody. What I always say is like, I haven't deleted the apps, I don't check them, but like, I don't know what's going to happen. You know what I mean? And so, like, I don't wanna close down an opportunity for something that the universe throws at me, that everything just kind of, like, locks into place and, like, all these dominoes fell to make this happen, and I don't know where that's gonna come from, so but I'm not trying to date anybody, and so I don't have to have that conversation. Now, I'll tell you, if I had to have the conversation, which would be awkward, it would be along the same lines of the conversation I had with any girl that I dated, and it says, "Here's my red flags," because I got that out pretty quick.
Wow.
Like, I'm talking by the end of the first date, you know my flags, and because I don't wanna screw around in terms of, like, "Look, I'm 41, if I'm going to try to date you, then you should know this,
Yeah.
this, this, and if you're cool with that, these are the worst things that you will have to deal with, and if you're good with that, everything else shouldn't matter." Like, everything else you'll find out about organically shouldn't matter as long as you're good with this. And most girls that I've known, there's 2 types of girls, right? But all of them are like, "Oh, yeah, cool. That's not a red flag at all. Those aren't red flags. Why would you have to be worried about that?" All of them say that. It's like, if you get to a date, all of them say that. I don't know, like 70% of them will never talk to me again. And that sucks because you get invested in that type of stuff. A lot of them, like I said, they will never talk. I don't know what exactly it was because I just got ghosted again. Like, and it sucks because I have my own abandonment issues, but I'd rather that happen straight up than kind of like a a game of manipulation where you I work on you for 2 months and then, like, "Oh yeah, here's a bunch of crazy."
Yeah.
No, like, here's my crazy. Not all at one time. You're gonna get some of my crazy in the first conversations that we have in text messages. So by the time the first date happens, if you actually made it to that point, you have a certain amount of understanding of my crazy. But if you make it through that first date and you're good, then we'll probably be good. But the problem I have now is I'm honest. I'll tell you everything about me. I'll tell you what I'm thinking. Yeah, I kind of like you. Yeah, I don't know if this is gonna work. Blah blah blah. I'll say it. I think ghosting is a coward's ways out. I
Agreed.
think ghosting is the equivalent to not taking your shopping cart back to the corral. It's a lack of character. It's a lack of, yeah, it's a lack of character, and it's emotional laziness. And it has real impact. So to those 70% of girls who ghosted me, I'm not mad at you, but you should probably get some help too. Or
It's a mature thing.
just reflect. Just reflect on that time that we made an agreement, a blood pact, that we would not ghost each other, and then you still ghosted me. I'm not gonna call you out by name, but you should reflect. Anyways, any other questions?
What would you hope for yourself? Do you have any, like, hope or
To win the
aspiration for
lottery?
yourself in that? I meant
Yeah,
in the
I wanna.
whole relationship area. I mean,
Are you asking me if I wanna get married again? Is that what you're asking?
no.
I don't
What do you see? Or what do you hope?
for I don't know, what I used to tell girls is what I'm looking for is the same thing any of us are looking for on this app, which is my person, but I'm not really, like, in a rush to get there. That's the go-to, and it's also not the truth because I don't know. I wish I had a better answer for you because there there there's a saying that I have been battling, thrown around in my head, and I almost made it the episode name for the first episode of the show, which was I would say that none of this was according to plan, but I don't think I ever had one. And so like that is something I'm trying to deal with now is and that's part of my problem is I've never planned things out. I've never said like do this. I just did things as they arose and took paths as they became available to me, but I never had long-term intentions. And like I don't know where it's going to be. I'm just going to see where this path takes me. And it might be marriage or it might be a restraining order. Never happened, but I'm going to follow this path. And so to answer your question, I don't know because I don't know I don't know what I want because I don't know. Family, I have my son. That was like the most important thing. And so like I will always have family now because I have my son. So before I could answer that question, I need to answer a different question and that is who do I want to and I don't entirely know yet. So until I can figure that out and then be that person, then I can't really figure out what I want after that.
Makes sense. I mean, as far as I know, I just have best friend as the list and passion. But I mean, under best friend, all those subcategories: loyalty, openness, honesty.
Oh, you're talk about terms of what are you looking for in a person? Terms of person, I think I don't know. I have my type, and my type hasn't worked. But how do you alter your type? And that's like a whole thing. But ultimately, I know there are some like lines in the sand, and that is I have to be able to have an intelligent conversation with the person. You have to vote. You have to think my Barack Obama impersonation sounds like Barack Obama. I don't know. And if they were rich, so I never have to work, I'm willing to stay at home with the kids. I'd be a great stay at home dad. I say this all the time. I'll wake up in the morning, get the kids ready for school, drive them to school. I'll be a drop off dad, go work out after I'm done dropping them off, come home, take a nap, freaking clean the house, go pick up the kids, have them help them with their homework, do freaking dinner, get them fed, put them to bed, smoke some weed, play some video games, maybe get laid, go to sleep and do it all over again. I'm good with that.
And see, I like that about the switching up of the different gender roles because that was one thing I will say that I did like about my marriage. There wasn't we're expected both to bring 100% because if the other person isn't able to or for whatever situation, the other person has to be able to carry. So yeah, there were times I was sick that, he did stuff for me to help me out and things like that that obviously I miss. But yeah, the I like that you hit that point as far as like different in gender roles. And I think honestly more men should be more accepting of that because I have seen that men have just a very bad uncomfortableness of, like, the woman being the person who
Well, no, that just feeds
brings
back
in.
into the other thing, and that is men being insecure. And that's why they do all this stupid stuff online where they're sending you dick pics and harassing harassing you with a million messages. Because it's not because they're secure. No, they're completely insecure and they don't know how to
Yeah.
act. And so the thing is, I'm secure in my ability to be a man. And when I need to be a man, I'm gonna be a man, and I know that that sounds weird and that may sound toxic, but, like, there are situations, especially when you're in a when you have a relationship in which you focus on communication and you know what type of roles that you 2 are fulfilling for each other, like, I know when I need to step up and perform my manly duties. Making the most amount of money is not a manly duty.
No, it's not.
I just I don't care about that part. Like, I don't what like, I can still stay at home with my children and also beat up the burglar that's coming into my house. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's not it doesn't threaten who I am as a man. It's not, and in fact, it makes my life easier. So, I don't understand why men feel that way, but again, men are insecure and most of them need to talk to somebody. But anyways, ultimately, I just want to say, I think one of the things I've taken from this conversation, and just from both of us talking is that a lot of times that grief and its impact on us is a lot quieter than people think. It doesn't often show up in the way that people want you to grief. Like sometimes it doesn't look heroic from the outside. Sometimes it just looks like getting up and loving your child and carrying memories that don't fit neatly together, but still trying to build a life with honesty. And there's a lot of courage in that. There's a lot of courage in you. And I want to thank you for sharing your story with me. Everyone, this was Jewel, and this has been Reactivated.